The views, thoughts, and opinions expressed in the podcast belong solely to the hosts and not the host's past, present, or future employers. Hello, everybody. Thank you again for joining us for part 2 with Jasmine Jackson on Bringing Down Security this week. We're going to talk about app permissions. We're going to talk about just doing some simple things to see if the application makes sense. If you've ever downloaded a flashlight app that wants access to your contacts, for instance, you'll understand why we are asking these kinds of questions of our guests this week. Also, we talk about some of the tools, ways that you can analyze and what some of the things you should be looking for in regards to that. Also, another simple thing, documentation in the code base and understanding what code would do, or and then finally, of course, tools that can be used for good and evil. We talk about some of the ways that those tools can be used to get around security requirements. So I guess that's all I've got. So on with the show. I know that having rooted my own phone, I know that there are apps out there that allow you to say, per app, per permission, and in Android, the later versions of Android, I think I have whatever Android, quiche or whatever the hell they're calling it now, Android quiche or whatever the hell. It has the ability to, turn those off individually.
Yes.
It takes a lot to secure that. And a lot of people who just grab apps don't really care what the permissions are. But,
I mean, you have, and I'm sorry for cutting you off, you have a lot of people who just get apps and they just automatically say yes without looking at the permissions. It's like, I'm looking at the weather. Why do you need like my banking information?
My camera.
Like, why do you, and it's just like, people need to pay more attention. But again, it's just kind of like, oh yeah, this is like because before it's like with mobile devices, cell phones, it was like you can talk, then they added texting, they added games, Snake, who remembers Snake? And, I love Snake. Yep. And it was like, it was very, it was like a regular phone. I mean, you just made calls and texts. But now these phones are so advanced, you can do video from your phone and it's crisp. And, you have these apps and you can do all the things. And it's like people still have the mindset of mobile devices as if this is like the late 90s, early 2000s. And it's like, no, that is not the case anymore. Like, you need to secure your mobile device.
Well, the only way I can secure my mobile device is by giving it to my 15-year-old who can bypass all my security controls anyway. But Ms. Berlin, you had a question?
Are there any apps or anything? So like I for my iPhone, I have one called iVerify, I think. iVerify, which like basically is just a security checkup to make sure like if you have any passwords saved or what you're set to, or like all this other stuff. And it also checks like your apps and also does a whole bunch of other stuff. And I just didn't know if I'm assuming there's stuff out there like for Android, but I'm also assuming that there's a lot of it. And maybe not super great. Like maybe it's a fake antivirus type thing.
Yeah, what I noticed is a lot of antivirus software is starting to venture into the mobile space, which is good. So if you have a particular antivirus like Norton or Avast or what have you, I'm noticing they have a product for mobile security, right? And it's like, at the very least, I would say have that. At least you have some visibility to see, okay, what is going on with my device? Okay, this application is running in the background and it's scraping all of my information. Why? Like, okay, uninstall this app, right? But it's just like a lot of times people, the standard user, they just want to use it. They're not thinking of the repercussions until it happens to them. Even, reading, articles online or on the news, it's just like, oh, okay, well, that hasn't happened to me, so I'm safe. And it's like, yeah, no one's really safe,
So, I want to go back a little bit because you'd mentioned that you've analyzed some apps that had hard coded credentials in them. Where after you've used the app and you said the first thing you do is you load it up and you run it and everything. If you know that it's a hostile app, how does that change your workflow? And what are some of the places in the app that you actually will find those hard-coded credentials? Is there any specific fields or are there any specific areas that somebody could look at? I'm not trying to give you any competition or anything, but if you're looking at bug bounties, what does that look like for a hard-coded credential?
Yeah, actually, a lot of times it's in the code. So Android is written in Java. So a lot of times you will see like actual like if password equals blah, and it's just like I know this isn't a pass. I was like, I know this isn't a password. Like
devs don't do stuff like that. Devs don't do stuff like that.
Don't do that. And it's like some other things is besides the Android manifest, there's also like res, which is resources. There are a few other files that are part of the apps, when you decompile. And it's like I can't think of the name now, but it's one where it's where it kind of describes all of the characteristics of the app. And even in that file, it's like debug equals true, right? Debug, and it's like, don't have debug on in production data. Like production apps, whether it's web or mobile, smart devices or whatever, do not have debug equals true. Okay, make sure you turn that off before you push to production.
So I'm ignorant. I don't know what that means, having debug equals true running.
So in programming, when you are developing, sometimes programmers will have like additional checks. So let's just say I'm developing a functionality and I want to make sure that it works. Well, I might add code that says activate this functionality when debug equals true, right? Okay. So it's really a sanity check when you're in implementation, when you're in the implementation stage to make sure everything works. And security practices, you can do that in the implementation stage, but before you move to QA or test, you need to turn that off. But what you find a lot of times is, they leave it in. So it's like if I have an app or like a mobile device or or a web application and I see debug equals true, it's information leakage or information disclosure because it can leak, information I shouldn't see, right? Something else to look at in Android devices, and again, this will be in the code, logging, right? You don't want to log like PII, personal identifiable information. I kind of had a brain fart there because I was like PII. Yeah, so you don't want to do things like that, like credit cards, social security numbers, bank IDs. You will be really surprised, again, because a lot of times these companies do not think their apps will be reverse engineered. So it's like, put it in here. No one is really going to reverse engineer this. And then you look and it's like, wow, like you really spent no time on security. It was just like, just push it. Right. So again, these are things that, you need to be cognizant of. Also, another tool, Android Debug Bridge, and that's where you can connect your computer to the device or the emulator, right? And so again, the Android operating system is built upon Linux. So it has a lot of the Linux functionality. So you can use like ifconfig to get like your IP address, and then you could connect, and then they can talk to each other. And then you can like install, like you can have the app on your computer and then install it on the device, or you can push things on the device or pull things from the device, like pull it from the device to your computer and analyze it that way. That's a really good tool for Android. So Like if you actually had a device, you would need like a USB cord to connect to like your computer and the actual device, and then you could do it that way. That's something that's really, really good to use. Also, I would say I'm of the firm belief, I've been doing application security for a little over 10 years now. And, you have the tools, the SaaS tools, the DaaS tools, and you have the same thing for Android, right? You have the scanners. One in particular, MOBSF, is open source on GitHub. I have that in my virtual machine as well. And, it does like static analysis, dynamic analysis, and all of these things. But what I tell people is like, when you're starting out, you need to understand the fundamentals without the scanners. And what I mean by that is, you need to put fingers to keyboard, bang your head to figure out how things work. Because if you use the scanners and it's like, okay, if I take the scanners away, what are you going to do?
Right. So, So I when I worked at Leviathan, we did some mobile testing with some testers. And we talked about this a little bit before the show, but there are different kinds of apps for Android and for iOS in this case. Some of them are full-fledged, fully blown app, and it's completely independent from the web application, has its own APIs, has its own functionality, has its own network calls or URLs that it reaches out to, all the way down to one that just is a fleshed out web browser with a fancy CSS to be mobile friendly. Do you find that do you have any specific trends that you're seeing there where they're starting to move towards the more simpler type of thing where everybody uses the same APIs from the web and the mobile to simplify development? Or are you seeing more fully featured, fully fleshed out applications? Or is it just a modicum of both?
I would say more so even when I was at the investment, the company that I worked at, straight out of grad school, they had, for their application, they had their mobile app, their mobile code was completely different from their web app code, right? And then they noticed to keep up and to maintain it was too much. So then they started consolidating to what you said of having like one API, but then doing fancy dancy stuff to make it look like, it was actually a mobile device. So for a lot of companies, for some companies, I would say they're using that approach of like, instead of having a mobile and a web, they consolidate and, do the, fancy cascading style sheets or CSS to make it look like a mobile app. Because you got to think, it's like if you have two separate code bases, and let's just say I have a developer, who was there from the inception and now they don't work there anymore. And, there might be functionality that you don't understand. It works. It's almost like magic. It's like, yeah, we know it works, but we don't know how, right? Because it's like the person or the people who are here are no longer here. And of course, in development, anyone would tell you, documentation, that's funny. No one documents. Right. It's like you only document when you first create and you hand it to production support or whoever's going to maintain the app, when it eventually blows up. Otherwise, you don't have documentation. So it's like, so to mitigate against that, if you have everything in one code base, and then it's kind of like, okay, when things blow up, it's like, okay, it's here, as opposed to, well, is this mobile or is this web? It's mobile. Okay. No one understands the code base. Here we go. Right. Right. And it takes us, 20 hours to find something that is a 3 to 5 minute fix. So, yeah.
Yep. That makes sense. Just thinking in terms of trends, if you're seeing more of the simpler, all the APIs that are on the web page or on the mobile app, are you actually seeing where we may not need to have mobile testing being done in the future? Or will there still be mobile testing? It's just for, the specific things on the handset itself.
I would would say we would still need mobile testing even for the handset, for the handset that we have, because it's like, even though companies are moving to more streamline, there are some companies where that just doesn't work, right? And you have to separate the two. So it's like you will still always need mobile security. And then it's just like, again, just the threat vectors are totally different on a mobile device as opposed to a web application. In mobile device, you have network, you can sniff the traffic, the web app, SQL injection, cross-site scripting, all of those things. And then you actually have the physical device itself, like looking at the database where things are stored, SMS phishing, MMS phishing, text and multimedia phishing. There's so many things that you can do on the actual device itself. And going back to what I said in the beginning with Android being fragmented, it's like definitely need to do security, because it's like an app might work one way in one device, but not work the same in the next device, right? So it's like, I remember even when I was a developer and we had web and mobile separate, we had mobile device and tablets, and we had different versions because we wanted to see how the application will react. And, we might have 10 devices, 9 devices, it's great, same, you click the button, it turns green. The last device, you click the button, it turns purple. And it's like, why is it turning purple? Like, what's going on? So you're always going to have those nuances with devices.
Right. So you're before we go, because I think we're getting fairly long here. Your SourceForge site, you have a build that will allow you to test APKs. What version of Android does that use? Because like you said, starting from like Jelly Bean on, they had specific security features inside the OS itself that earlier versions didn't have. And I mean, they're depending on who you're talking to, you could have all the way down to like Donut, which is, their 4.0 version, all the way up to their version 11, which is the new hotness, depending on the handset manufacturer. Google's gotten better at this in the last few years, but what version is it that's running on your SourceForge site? And are there anything that has been added in the later versions of Android that maybe is not in your version?
So that is a good question that I really haven't thought of. So I know I've used the emulator, which is like Oreo, and I think that's like Oreo 9.0, I believe. Yeah. So that's a good question for the listeners to, try it out and see if they're like, hey, this doesn't work for our, for my device. That would be very interesting to see. I would really like to see that. So yeah, I really don't have an answer for you for that question.
Well, yeah, I'm sorry about that. I know that developers tried to develop for the largest amount. So there must be code in there that says if you're running Oreo or Quiche or whatever the hell R is going to be, that, take advantage of this API or take advantage of this security feature or whatever. So, just something to keep in mind, I guess, if you're testing that, like you said, there may be some security stuff that will cause blockage, or if you're a QA person using, Jasmine's tools here, you may get different vulnerabilities depending on which version you're testing with. So it's something to keep in mind when you're doing that.
Yeah, that is, I never thought of that, but that is something to keep in mind. Like, for instance, talking about Android and security, with Android, like 5.1 and below, like when you installed apps, the permissions will come at installation time. So it's like you click to install an app and it's like, hey, this app wants to use these set of permissions. Do you approve? And if you said no, the app wouldn't install. It's like, oh, okay, well, you don't approve this, it wouldn't install. And then it was like after 6.0, then it was like, okay, well, you can install the app and we'll just ask you the permissions at runtime. So when you actually click to run the applications, and that's how it is now. It's like, hey, the Fluffy Birds, it wants to read your contacts. Do you approve or deny, right? And so it's done. So things like that. So yeah, so it's like, again, I think the main thing with Android, and I mentioned this earlier, how the iOS, and again, I'm not in the Apple ecosystem, but how it's pretty much streamlined, like between the different devices. And it's like with Android, it's not, it's very fragmented. And then it's like almost what you mentioned with, you try to develop for the highest, the largest, subset. And it's like, I think when I took the 575 class, it was like the largest amount of Android, like the operating system was like 2 operating systems behind, right? And it was like what they found with Android is, well, first, I don't believe you have to do, there's not automatic. I think they have it now, automatic updates. But before they didn't have that. So it's like you can have a phone with the original version of Android, and you didn't have to, and you could just keep that operating system. Like it didn't force you to update, as opposed to with iOS, it's like, no, we force you, we push, and you have to do it. I think Android has been good now with doing that. But even with that, I want to talk about quickly, even in like February of this year, in the latest security bulletin, there were 40 vulnerabilities found in the Android operating system. And, 16 of those were high severity privilege escalations. And, one of them was like privilege escalation and the actual Android runtime. So you're talking about like the actual Android system, and you have vulnerabilities, like a high severity vulnerability this month. Like this report came out at the beginning of this month. So it's like, people think like, oh, okay, we have, security is being added, which is good. But again, these apps are still still insecure. And it's like, all a hacker needs is just one entry point, right? And, and they can get in, and that's all they need. And they have all the time in the world, right? And it's, at home running scripts, doing this, doing that, automated. And it's just like, all they need is just one entry in to wreak damage and wreak havoc onto your system. So it's like a lot of developers really need to think about that. And people, just general users as well of these mobile devices. It's like 2-factor authentication should definitely be on. Like even with your anything that you use, you should have 2-factor authentication. But it's like, it's, surprising how people are just like, oh, I'll just use a username and password. It's like, yeah, that's not secure. And it's just like, I could break that. And it's like, if your password is password 123, I can get that in like less than 5 minutes. Right. So it's like, yeah, because people don't really understand about complex passwords. Right.
That's right.
And so it's just like, you need to add you want to make it, again, hackers can get into pretty much anything that they set their mind to. Right. Your job is to make it as hard as possible for them, and for it to take so long, they will give up, and they're just like, it's not worth it. The risk to reward is not worth it. So I'm going to move on to something else.
Yep. All right. That's a very good point. All good points there. So, Miss Berlin, do you have any other questions for Jasmine?
No, I don't think so.
Okay. Mr. Betcher, how about you?
Yeah. Okay, let's say someone downloads a malicious app. That app's not containerized. Let's say I don't give it any permissions. Can it still see other apps? What's going on? Is there some sort of a jailbreak feature? Or is it more like a regular operating system where processes can talk to other processes, right?
Yeah, so it's like I believe, and again, I really haven't done a lot of experience with this, but I believe it's probably the second option of like it still has processes and they probably could talk to each other. So it's like if you, for the most part, there are no containers or sandboxes for these apps or these mobile devices unless you set one up. So it's just kind of like you install it onto your device. And at this point, it can talk to pretty much anything else that's on your device and access things, right? So it's like there's no sandbox or container to actually contain it.
Right. So Jasmine, I don't want to put any words in your mouth here, but one of the things about Android is there's no root on the box. There's no root user. You cannot be root. The binaries to become root, in this case SU for like Linux users or sudo in this case, doesn't exist. So when you start up, I'm not sure about the startup process for Android, but I would imagine it's you do root and everything, and then as you log in as your user or as it automatically starts up, it drops you to your user account.
Standard.
There's no local admin, right?
Yeah.
There's a standard user.
Yeah, standard.
One of the reasons it's so much fun to root or device or unlock the bootloader is that you can do things like install apps that will allow you to extend the functionality, change the kernel levels, the power being used in it, modify the kernel so that you can run at low power and extend your battery life. I love doing that. ADB is something I lived with for several years.
Yeah, I was just about to mention that because in ADB, the Android debug bridge, you can actually run as root. Like you can change it to say ADB root and then it starts at root. And then you can say ADB shell and it puts you into the shell of your device. And then like what you mentioned earlier, it's SU or switch user. And Linux, if you just say SU enter, that's a privilege escalation where you go from a standard user to root, right? Yep. So that's a handy dandy way to do that. And you can do that in ADB, and then that's when you can like root things and do all the things that you mentioned.
Yep. Yeah, and there are packages that you actually had to sideload using ADB to become root or to add your own sudo environment or sudo environment. I think the newer, I think my Pixel actually has wireless ADB. So if I'm on the same network as my computer, I can actually do ADB wireless. I don't need a cable. Yeah, let me double check that. Where is that at? I saw that. I think you have to be a developer to do that. A developer mode, but on the Pixel, you're always a developer. So
yeah, because I was going to say, because I know with older Android devices, it's like, yeah, you have to be a developer mode, and you go to like
wireless
some
debugging.
Wow. And then
you can activate that.
Yeah, it's like you go to like a button and then you press it like 7 times and it's like, congratulations, you're developer mode. It's like, are you kidding me? Like 7, like, why did you pick 7? It was just arbitrary. It's like, okay. But wow, I didn't know that there was wireless mode.
Yeah. I hadn't played with that because, I stopped trying to root my devices, as I said earlier, because it's a pain in the ass to start doing that now. There's apps out there. Safety Net is one of the newer things that's come out with later Android versions that will, one of the reasons I had to stop rooting my device was Pokemon Go uses Safety Net. At least that's what my daughter told me. I don't play Pokemon, but you had to put in other workarounds like Magisk to be able to make it believe that it's like a cloaked root, if you will. So instead of, because the easiest way it does it is it looks for the SU binary, and if it does, it's like, oh, you've been rooted, and we're not going to run shit for you, and that includes things like banking apps and Pokemon and other important apps that you may want to run.
But you could actually bypass that. And I actually do that in my first YouTube video that I did is with Frida, the dynamic analysis tool. And it's just like, I show an example of that because the app that I have, Uncrackable Level 1, is like you start the app and it's like, oh, you're rooted. Like you can't, that's it. Like you can't get into the application. Right. And as you reverse engineer the app and you look at the functionality, it looks for SU, it looks for the, environment path to see, okay, are you like accessing like privilege files and whatever. And it's like, but you can actually bypass that with Frida, with dynamic analysis tool. So it's, again, it's like, and with Frida, it's you can program, it's application that has like a server portion to it, and then you write like little scripts, and the scripts can be in JavaScript and Python. Like you can pick which language, but it's just like you can actually overload or change the implementation of a method to say, okay, like for instance, if I'm running Sue, then return true that yes, you are rooted. Well, in Frida, I can change, create a script, and it's like, hey, I want to implement this method, and instead of saying true, I want it to be false, right? To bypass. So yeah, so even with that, you can still bypass those checks with like additional tools. Frida is very, very powerful. I tell people that, because you can change it on the fly. Like you can have the application running, do a script, execute Frida, and then it'll bypass. So yeah.
Well, that may be why that may be why I see websites with, specially modified versions of Pokemon Go, which they're like, oh yeah, here, download this and you won't have to worry about the safety check anymore. And then I'm like, okay, what else did you put in your app while you were cracking it? Which is the one thing that bothers me about that. There's tools like Frida that allow you to get around the, the security protections that have been put into place. But then it's like, if you can do that, what other things have they put in? Have they, put in back doors to allow, attacks for other things, or making calls to, countries that won't be named, China or anything like that?
Yeah. Right. Yeah. I mean, that is true. And then, that is possible. I know when I took the 575 class, it was like an app, and that was here in the States, and then they reverse engineered, and it's like, yeah, these servers are in China. Like, why are you? They're like, yeah, this is a counterfeit. Like, you are literally sending your credentials to another country, and so it's it's very, very interesting, and again, everyone is not going to like reverse engineer their apps. I mean, just my takeaway from this podcast is just be careful. Like when you are installing apps, just be careful.
Yep.
Just, just do due diligence. And, if something feels wrong, just don't download it. Just be like, nah, I'm good. I need to research a little more, Again, just do your due diligence.
Yeah. And if you're analyzing, applications like Jasmine does, make sure that you're safe doing that too, because it may be malicious. You just don't know it yet until you run it. And it's like, so make sure you have a recovery plan. Make sure you're not running those on, company machines. I know we
so back to flip phones as well.
Back to
right. And I mentioned like in my video, it's like, hey, if you want to root your device, do not do it on your primary device, because if your primary device is, if you have like T-Mobile, because, they bought out Sprint, Verizon, AT&T, it's like you root your device, you have voided your warranty, right? So it's like, be very careful, because when you take your phone in and it's like, it's not working, and they're like, you rooted it, that's it. They don't do anything else. They give it back to you and they say, good luck. So, be very careful. Can
you re-image
primary device? Use like a backup device, a device that has no personal data of yours. And it's just like, okay, if I brink this, I don't care.
Right. Mr. Betcher, you had a question. You said what?
If you root your phone, can't you re-image to get it back to the factory reset?
I mean, you could possibly, but most people don't do that. They just, if they root their device, it's like, oh, I have a warranty, so I'm going to go to the provider and they're going to do it for me. And then they're going to be like, no, we're not, because you have effectively voided your warranty.
Yep. Yeah. I find the best way to do that, especially if I drop my phone and it gets wet or something, you just go and microwave it for about 10 minutes and then it dries itself out completely. No, I'm just kidding. Please don't go microwave it.
No. I know some people, because one of my phones was wet and someone was like, put it in, like get a jar, put some rice and put your phone in. I was like, huh? They're like, no, I promise it works. And I was like,
that's the safer option. Or if you have a bunch of those silica gel packets that desiccants, we'll pull that out. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. So one of the last questions that we have, you have an OWASP. You mentioned OWASP in the Uncrackable level 1. Are there spoiler alerts in that? If somebody's doing Uncrackable level 1, do they want to watch that video before they do it, or are there definitely spoilers in that?
And as far as if you go to the OWASP MSTG Mobile Security Testing Guide, GitHub, if you click the Uncrackable, like the Crack Me links, which it holds the Uncrackable levels, there are write-ups. So, and again, so again, if you are stuck, write-ups are a good thing, right? You can kind of look and see, how someone approached a problem and you're like, hey, okay, I never thought of that. But it's like my video is like an hour long and I go into like painstaking detail, like explaining every little thing. So awesome. When I teach a course, it's like, even if you don't have a lot of knowledge in the subject, you should be able to follow from A to Z. And you at the end, you might be like, hey, I didn't understand everything, but I could follow along, right? So because I also have a blog, the Fluffy 007, and what I found was when I was getting into security, like some of the blogs I was looking at, it had like assumptions of like, you had to be this, super elite hacker. And it was just like, for a lot of people, it would turn them off. So it's just like, I do my write-ups and videos for like the absolute beginner. So
that sounds great. Okay. We have a link to that in our show notes. I also just added the OWASP MSTG manual there in the show notes. There's a ton of links. I mean, pretty much anything we've talked about tonight, ADB, including a blog post from you from Bug Crowd, the Diary of an Inexperienced Bug Hunter, Android hacking. I added that as well. Okay. And Jasmine has been kind enough to add a ton of other links to introduction to things like Java. Adding, you've added the Crack Me already. Okay, I called it something else, so I will remove that. So she added the MSTG bit. But yeah, there's a ton of great information and resources in the show notes. If you're looking to that, you can go to breakingsecurity.com to get those. So, all right. Well, Jasmine, I think I've overstayed our welcome in your lovely abode here, and I think we probably should be done. Miss Berlin, Mr. Betcher, any other questions before we wrap up?
No, I'm all good. Thank you.
Excellent. All right, Jasmine, you said you give this Android mobile training on an ad hoc basis. Are you planning on giving it anywhere at any conferences soon? Any B-sides? Have you reached out to a B-sides or anything to give this?
I haven't. I might, but I haven't. Not as of yet.
Okay. I know there's pretty much a B-sides going on every week, every weekend. So there's no shortage of people who'd be willing to want to come to your trainings. So
yes.
Definitely. If you want to do that, let us know. I can definitely put you in contact with some organizers. I think B-sides Huntsville did some workshops as well. But yeah, I definitely would love to see this at a conference. I'd love to take it myself.
Okay.
So cool. How would people get a hold of you if they were a B-sides coordinator or organizer and said, hey, we want to have you, we heard you on the show?
Yes. So I have a Twitter and Instagram, the Fluffy 007. So THEFLUFFY 007. Okay. Twitter, Instagram, and then my blog is the Fluffy 007. So everything is the Fluffy 007.
That makes it so much easier,
Yes.
It's all
and
the same.
YouTube as well. The YouTube. It's like, again, I don't want to confuse people. So everything is the same.
Yep. Very cool. Okay. Awesome. That's awesome. And all of those links are in the show notes, including Twitter handle as well. So, Ms. Berlin, So here's the deal. I know you're doing your IR tabletop stuff, and I need 4 SANS CPE credits from an upcoming conference. I know that you're going to be giving that workshop somewhere. Where are you going to be giving that, and where can I sign up for it?
So we are on Wild West Hacking Fest website.
Okay.
We're doing that in April.
Okay. Are there slots still available, or can you do me a heavy? Because I need 4.
As far as I know,
okay.
there are free ones still.
Okay. Well, I won't take a free one because, you know, I'm
No,
not cheap ass like that. I'll pay for it.
No, I could probably get you a deal.
No, I don't need a deal. I make money.
Okay.
I will pay for it, and I don't want to take anything out of y'all's mouths. So,
but yeah, we're doing it through there, and hopefully soon we'll hear back we're doing it privately for companies now as well. For a
fancy
minimum amount of people.
Okay.
Right, because we don't want to like only give it to 2 people.
Okay.
So yeah, they're for sure, and then you know, when we have our InfoSec camp out,
yep,
we want to do it there. And they Wild West Hacking Fest definitely wants to have their in-person thing in June, so we're going to give something there as well.
Ooh, wow. Is that Wild West Hacking Fest in San Diego or in Deadwood?
Reno.
Reno. Okay.
Yeah.
I'm not judging. I'm judging, actually. I'm judging in my head.
But I mean, Michael's moving to Yuma, so I mean, it's close enough.
Wow. Good God. How about desolation there? Anyway.
Yeah.
All right. Okay. So long story short, if anybody wanted to get in contact with you about signing up for these, or, hey, you know, we have a company of 85 people who want to do your training and we think it's great, how would they get a hold of you?
They can contact us directly, either me or Jeremy on Twitter. I'm at InfoSister. He's Cyborg00101. Or, you know, the other place that we just sent a quote to did it through Wild West Hacking Fest, because they're helping support us through that kind of stuff, like all the background things. So yeah, all of those things.
Right on. Okay. And you're also doing Hackers Mental Health. So it's at Hackers Health. Yep. You're doing some stuff there still. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. We're ramping up some projects. We're sending, like 7 or 8 of our volunteers to mental health first aid classes.
Oh, nice. Okay.
Yeah. And then we're all, because like we have money and we're not traveling or doing anything, so we want to try and use it. We did the feel good boxes, and we have another shipment of those. We're waiting on a couple more submissions. So if anybody wants to submit, if you think anybody's deserving of a little pick me up or feeling down or something, you can nominate them on our website.
Okay.
There's like a little form that says, you know, who you are, who they are, why you think they should get it. And we don't just like take their information, just send them stuff, because that's creepy. We don't ask for their information. We like get their name and say, hey, this is us. This is what we're doing. And can you give us your address? Because we promise we won't sell it. Because it's literally just me and Megan with, you know, a couple $1,000s worth of Amazon stuff and notes and little other handmade stuff that we put together in boxes and ship them out to people. Nice. So those things. We're trying to get a painting class up and going. I've been painting a lot lately.
Oh, I saw that. That's very nice. Done some very nice work, Grandma Moses. So.
Thank you.
That's an inside joke, folks. You'll have to follow her on Facebook to see them interesting photos. Yes.
Like that doesn't look like a candle.
It's a candle. We'll call it that. Yeah. So how would people, if people wanted to nominate somebody for a mental health, care package or something, what's the website for that?
It is mentalhealthhackers.org.
Okay. Sounds good. Yep. And of course they can find you on Twitter at InfoSister, INFOSYSTIR.
Yep.
Okay. Mr. Betcher, how about you? What's going on with LogMD?
Not much. We got a trademark, so that was the big thing recently.
Wow. Fancy.
Yeah.
Trademark.
And, that's about it lately.
Okay.
Not much.
How would people get a hold of you if they wanted to talk about LogMD and what it's all about?
Well, log-md.com.
Okay.
Check that out, or my Twitter is @BetcherPwned.
Right on. Okay. That's BOETTCHERPWNED. So,
You got it.
all right, cool. All right. So I'm almost done here. We have a TPub store. We have shirts, masks. I've been sending out masks and stickers and t-shirts to people. I've reached out to, I've kind of done my own care packages out of my own pocket. If you're wanting to get a t-shirt or a coffee mug or a sticker or a mask or something like that, you're helping local and small businesses, which is great in this time of COVID, people needing, to be able to do soap screenings for t-shirts or whatever. So you'll be helping out small businesses, local mom and pop shops that are, waiting for you to hook up with them. You can go to where's our store link? Okay, breaksec.com, BRAKESEC.com/store, and you can check that out. We also get a small kickback on the show for that if you are interested. Speaking of which, thank you to all of our Patreon supporters. They help us out with just the time and effort by giving us a few bucks here and there to pay for time and effort building community, editing podcast, domain registration, Zoom, everything. So we appreciate them for their logistical support. None of the care packages that I'm sending out to people come out of the money from the Patreon supporters, but they do a lot of great work helping us to support this. Podcast is always free, but we do appreciate their remuneration and their support in that respect. Let me see. We're on every major platform I think you can find: Amazon Music, Spotify, Pandora. The link's in the show notes if you're looking and you're like, oh, I didn't know we were on Spotify. Yeah, we're on Spotify, Amazon Music, Pandora, YouTube channels available, iTunes, Google Play, iHeartRadio, SoundCloud. I actually have more people hitting me up on SoundCloud than I do anywhere else, ironically. Really? Yeah, I know, it's weird. Please feel free to leave feedback on any and all of those platforms. It helps us, get more notice. And Jasmine would love to have some feedback about her episode on Pandora, iTunes, or Spotify, or whatever. So, or Google Play. So, definitely feel free to leave it.
Just to be clear, I don't want any feedback.
Why are you wearing a shirt that says "I want all your feedback"? So anyway,
I don't read the reviews for a reason.
Okay.
Oh my, yeah, I don't either. I read the U.S. ones.
Like I read book reviews on Amazon once and cried. Okay. So I just stopped.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I read the ones on the U.S. store, but I don't know how to read the other ones in the other countries. One, because I don't necessarily know how to speak those languages, but I don't know how to get to the iTunes stores or anything on those specific countries. So I apologize if you've left feedback to any of those. Thank you for leaving those feedbacks and continue to do so. And I'll reach out to find out how to do that eventually. We have a Slack, very active. Actually, it wasn't very active last week. I don't know if it's because it's the doldrums of the year. I think this is around that time of year where it's like, oh, everybody's starting to feel like, the holidays are gone and it's kind of the blahs, but we do have a lot of things going on. Our book club is about to start up again. Got a lot of
channel.
Sorry, what's that?
I'm just going to go there and channel and wake everybody up.
Oh, I try not to do the everyone. I've locked that down to only us.
I know.
Yeah, but we are moderated. We do have moderators. We do have a social contract. We do require people to read and follow that. We're one of probably the only places that has a no politics clause. So don't come in there trying to spout political nonsense because we'll ban the hell out of you. We've only had 2 bans in 6 years. So I think that's probably pretty good. And, we do things like career CV reviews and job boards and, advice channels on things. And we have a threat hunting and intel channel. So if you're looking for, hey, have any of you seen this thing going on in your environment? You can post that in our threat intel channel and people will be like, oh yeah, I saw that. Or, bad packet Twitter feeds or anything like that. So you can email us bds.podcast@gmail.com or hit us up on our official Twitter at Breaksec, BRAKESEC. And finally, you can follow me on Twitter if you want to, at Brian Brake, BRYANBRAKE. So, Jasmine, thank you again for coming and appreciate your time. And thank you for schooling us a little bit on Android hacking and the ins and outs there. And I definitely hope to see on your Twitter a class soon if everybody's interested. I really hope people on Twitter will reach out and say, yes, I'd love to have that class. So that would give you a reason to want to have that. So
yes, thank you so much for inviting me. I had a lot of fun.
Right on. Cool. All right. Well, that was it for Breaking Down Security this week. Have a great week. Be kind to one another. Hopefully, winter is over and spring will be coming soon. We can all get out and go to the beach for reals, not the snow beach or whatever the hell that was. Take care of yourself because you're the only you have. And we'll talk to you again soon.
Bye.
Bye.